I promised you that I would talk about importing your UK vehicle to France. I don't know much about it because it's changed since Brexit. I had a look. I've just had a bit of a look, and what I'll do is I'll share a link. It used to be quite easy. Well, not easy. I can remember it being really. It seemed complicated, and I can remember being on French forums and people asking about how they can change their headlights, because that's what was one of the important things that you needed to do, was to change your headlights so that they worked over here. And in order to pass your control technique, which is the equivalent to an MOT, the headlight diffuser things, the stickers that you stick on, won't work. And so that is still something that you have to do. But you also have to declare your vehicle on your inventory of goods now as you move to France, and that was something that we didn't have to do. We didn't have to do an inventory, and you will need to fill in a customs form, because you'll need to pay duty, or potentially pay duty and VAT on the car that you're importing. You will need a certificate of conformity. And I think for cars that were built in the EU and cars built in the EU exists now, like Spain or Germany, your certificate of conformity will suffice, will be enough. But now the UK's out of the EU, a UK certificate of conformity may not be enough. So what else have I got written down here? Certificate of, because eventually you will need to be able to apply for a Carte Grise, but you will need to have jumped through all the hoops first. When we came in May 2016, I lied. In July 2016, we had recently, God, I don't know where, we came over in May, so it must have been before May. I don't know. In March, we'd bought a camper, a VW T4 camper, which was lovely. It had been converted inside, so it was a T4 van which had been converted inside by somebody who had their own ideas about how they would do it, and it was fine. But the difficulty came when I just discovered 5 days before, somebody said to me on a forum that you wouldn't ever be able to get a certificate of conformity, and it wouldn't ever pass control technique in France, because the sliding door on a, forget this every time, don't I, which side I drive on when I'm driving, left or whatever. Anyway, the sliding door on a UK registered made car will open into the traffic, and they said to me, that's never going to pass. You know, we've heard of people that have tried before, and I was quite devastated. And it was like 5 days, so we're right up to our necks in everything else, and I really didn't know what to do, and we just, nothing we could do really. I mean, we carried on, and came over in our T4 van, which one day we'd taken up. We lived in Great Torrington in Devon, and we'd taken up to the Commons to sit up there and have the roof up and the door open and have an ice cream. And it was yellow. It was AA level, AA yellow, the van. And Mark was doing something to the paintwork or the tyres or something. And this little old lady came up, because it was a Sunday, I think, or a Saturday, and lots of people on the common and people driving up and parking and also having an ice cream. Little old lady said to him, "Having a day off, dear?" Thinking he was from the AA. That's funny. Anyway, we brought the camper over, full of as many belongings as we could get in it, and 3 cats. We had a big cage. We had a big cat, so we had a big cage for him. No, we had a big basket for him, and the 2 little cats were in a cage together. And the male of the 2, there was Grebo and Chansky, who were sister and brother. Grebo howled and all the way down, and every time we stopped, we opened the door for him so that he could see out, you know, so because their cages were facing out. We would open the door and all the cats would retreat to the back of the cage and stop being noisy. And then as soon as we started off again and he'd start, I know it was an 8 hour journey down, so it was very noisy. Several years later, we came down and brought down my daughter's cat as she was moving over. We brought him down and he was just silent all the way down. Um, Unbelievable. But no, and our Grebo was just noisy all the way down. And they'd spent overnight on a ferry on the open deck, so I don't know how that was for them. So yeah, so when we got here, and obviously, you know, you're sort of quite tired because we'd both just retired from work, so we were sort of dealing with the aftermath of having, you know, worked, and when you know what it's like, even just the week before you go on holiday, work gets harder towards the end of the week. It just feels even more stressful than it normally is. So we're both dealing with that, dealing with the move, dealing with we're in France and what do we do now, and enjoying the excitement. And so the van sort of took a bit of a sat on the back shelf for a bit, but we knew that we would have to change it. And Mark couldn't drive it. He'd hurt his knee, and I think he'd either hurt it driving the van or it was hurting him to drive it. So I was doing all the driving, which I recall back then was tiring. If we went into Poitiers, we didn't know Poitiers, we didn't know where we were, driving around in Poitiers, and so by the time we'd trawled around the streets trying to find somewhere to get into a car park, having driven there, I was exhausted because it was so soon after leaving work, and I hadn't realised quite how stressed I was at work until I came away from it and stopped for a bit. So yeah, we'd get there, you know, thinking, oh, we'll just go and have a nice coffee and sit in the square, which of course we've done a lot since. And I'd just sit there and cry and say, I don't want to be here. I want to be at home. So we came over, we brought the van over, stayed away in it a couple of times, and then his ex-sister-in-law and her husband talked about they had thought about getting themselves a camper and would be interested in buying ours before they committed, you know, newer money to it, or, you know, more money to a newer van, which was like, really? Because I don't think anybody would have bought it. I think we were really lucky that they wanted it. So they came over and stayed with us in the October, and we'd been here since July, and bought the van. And we spent the money on a newer car, which was a Renault Scenic, which was just a car. Mark never really liked it, and we always used to refer to it as the Renault Adequate, you know, because Bill Bailey talks about Vauxhall. Is it a Vauxhall Disappointment or a Vauxhall? I don't know. Temples of Doom, and so we used to refer to it as the Adequate, and then I don't know, 5 years ago, it broke rather badly and just died on us one Sunday when we were coming home from friends, and we had to be picked up by a breakdown truck, and it got hauled off to the Citroen garage, and eventually it wasn't worth paying out the money to have it repaired, so it went to the breakers in the sky, wherever they are in France, I don't know, and we bought ourselves a second-hand VW Touran, which we love. And I often say to Mark, because we watch Car SOS on the telly, and I often say to him, they're still taking a long time with your Scenic. I have told them to hurry up, because he'd hate to have that back. So yeah, so it worked out okay, and I think actually, you know, it was lovely having the van for the length of time we had it, but it wasn't really practical for driving backwards and forwards and doing stuff. It would have used a lot more fuel than the car did. And we're quite big. We're still big, but we were bigger, and it was not comfortable. It was a bit of a tight squeeze sleeping in it. So, but yeah, I think we took it to Ile de Ré a couple of times, or Ile de Laurent. But yes, it was so much easier then. You came here and you just got on with it, and um, nobody really bothered you. And it's not like that now, is it, with Brexit? You've got to jump through some hoops, and you have to fill in customs forms, and you have to possibly pay duty. And I thought, well, what was it I read? I'm going to put a link in the description because I can't remember, but something about that you mustn't have bought the car 6 months before you bring it over. I'm not sure if that applies to you've bought a brand new car to bring over, or whether it applies to any car. I don't understand why, but yeah, you mustn't have bought it less than 6 months before you move over. That wouldn't work for us with the camper because that was less than 6 months before we moved over. So yes, I'm out here absorbing some rays. It's really bright. It's lovely. It's beautiful. And I'm picking up some vitamin D and serotonin, dealing with some serotonin, although I'm already quite calm and focused, so I probably don't need the serotonin, but there was no harm in topping it up. The vlog that I uploaded yesterday, I made it. I started to upload it around about 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. The one I did of the garden tour, and it didn't finish uploading till I don't know about 10:30. So that's 12 hours. I have no idea how long this will take to upload, and it's random because some days it can be up in 2 or 3 hours. Our connection here is really poor. We even just this bit that we live in, we have poor connectivity. We have a poor mobile signal, if we're lucky. We have When we first moved here, we only had dial-up. So obviously being on the internet meant you were blocking the incoming calls, which caused lots of problems with one part of the family. So we were on dial-up for probably a year or two before we could, we then went on to satellite. So we started getting satellite internet. We had that for years and years and years, and about 14 months ago we finally changed to free, which is a box, a bit like you do when you have your BT Home hub, or it's a bit like that. It's a router that we're plugged into, and we're getting about 14 meg, which is not very good, but for us it was like 14 meg. It was really fast, but I think that it's not as good as it was, and it'll be years before we get fibre here. I think I asked the free tech was here the other week because we'd had problems with the internet, and I think I said to him, when do you think we'll get fibre? And he doesn't think it will be for at least another 2 or 3 years. And I see places around as we're driving, small places, and I think, well, we're a small place, and I see places that are getting fibre, and I think, why not us? My only hope is there's a new school we have a school in the village which has reopened in September as a private school. It's a bit like a Steiner school, or that type of school where the kids are sort of more self-led, and there isn't a strict curriculum. So it's sort of, I think it's quite a coup for our village to have that type of school. And I wonder whether the school committee and whether whatever goes on there, well, maybe there'll be money to pay for fibre, in which case we're 4 kilometres away, so we might get it. So we'll see. Anyway, I've waffled on, comme d'habitude. I'll put some links below for bringing your vehicles into France, and wish you a bon après-midi sous le soleil. Au revoir.